So this brings us to the great Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, one of my personal favorites. Here he came to visit me in my office. And Kierkegaard was an existentialist, but also a man of deep faith. And so he believed that each of us has to make our own, what he called a decision of fear and trembling, where we make a commitment of what we believe is true, and then we are obligated to live authentically according to the value system that we adapt. And that's similar. Existentialists will follow him. For example, Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre. What they will deny the religious aspect of that. But in Kierkegaard's construction, he basically looked out at the crowd, and while he agreed in some ways with Nietzsche that there were some people that were just following the herd, he saw that people fell into basically three categories. And so he saw the vast majority of people in what he called the aesthetic realm. Then a few more people would move up into what he called the ethical realm, and a very few would reach what he called the religious realm of moral reasoning. So these are people's moral dispositions. And at the aesthetic level, he basically said that people simply live to satisfy what pleases them. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean terribly immoral. It just means that the person perhaps, works hard all weekend and he wants to go fishing. Whatever it is that makes the person happy is their goal in life. You see that on the left-hand side. And so a person living at the aesthetic level is simply trying to come up with a happy life. Make sure they have enough food to eat. Make sure whatever it is that gives their life happiness is their goal and objective. Now, Kierkegaard basically says that each of these stages of faith and stages of morality come up with a crisis, and what literally an existential crisis. That's where it came from, the Danish word for existential crisis. And so basically what he said was that this crisis comes about when an aesthetic person says, is this all there is? Is this it? So we work really hard in school and we get good grades, and so that helps us get a good job. And so we get a nice house and a nice neighborhood and a nice car and maybe a nice vacation and 2.5 kids and a dog. And then we say, is that it? Like, okay, so what? Well, that's all there is. And so that crisis of meaning, which is I have stuff, but I'm not sure my life has significance, it doesn't have any reason, pushes us in the midst of this crisis to reach for a new ethical level. And he calls this the level of ethical. And this person's goal is to be good. So now a fewer people will move from the purely aesthetic level up to a level where they seek to be good people. Now, that begs the question, right? What makes a person good? And generally, they will seek that in some set of rules. They'll look for guidance, either from the society or the culture or their religion or whatever it is. They're going to find something to tell them. What are the rules? What do you do to be a good person? And then they will do it. They'll be pleasers. They want to please God. They want to please other people. They want to please their boss. That's where these people center their ethical core. Now, Kierkegaard suggests that this will, in fact, run up against a existential crisis as well. Now, this one can go one of two directions. One is that it simply becomes legalistic. That is, that being good simply means you check off the boxes. And that will bring back the same problem from the other level, which is meaning. So that it just seems like I'm a hamster on a wheel. I keep the rules to be a good person, but for what reason? Where does this go? And so pure legalism, that is keeping the rules for the sake of keeping the rules, becomes a catch-22, a vicious cycle. And that will then push the person to say there's got to be more, or the person could become frustrated and say all these rules are just ridiculous. I'm going to go back and just be happy. So Kierkegaard suggests that people can move up and down this scale. It's not like a scale of human development. It's not like Piaget, where you can only move forward. It's not like Freud, where you have to move forward, and if you don't resolve issues, then that causes problems, but you can't go backwards. In Kierkegaard's idea, people that can move back and forth between these levels. The other thing that comes up, the other crisis of faith that can develop, is that of diversity. So I'm a good rule keeper, and I'm doing all the right things. Then I go off to college, and I sit next to students who don't share the same cultural values, the same religion, the same background that I have, but then they're good people too. They seem to be moral and good and just and fair. And then I wonder, gosh, I don't know what to do with that, because suddenly there's now two sets of rules, and I'm a rule keeper. And so now I'm in a crisis mode because I don't know what to do. People who, for example, join the military suddenly have a culture clash of two different core values. Again, people that have roommates or meet good friends that are of a different religious persuasion, a different gender identity, suddenly don't know what to do with that. Now, when we realize that the ethical level is not fulfilling, few brave souls will press on to what he calls the religious realm. And in the religious realm, he means these are people who seek nothing else but to honor God. He calls this the knight of faith with a K. This is the person who goes after obeying God fully. He has a famous line, which is that the purity of heart is to will one thing. Now, this gets to be scary business, because he's going to argue that nobody else can tell you how to please God. Nobody else can tell you if you are being obedient to your inner core, your moral center. You're the only one that knows. You and God are it. And so if somebody says that God told them to commit some amazing act of generosity, only they and God know if that's true. Maybe they just want the credit. Maybe they want glory. Maybe they want a tax deduction. We don't know what's motivating the individual heart. We just simply have to go it alone. But this person is no longer trying to keep rules. This person is no longer trying to make themselves happy. They have really moved into a realm where few dare go, where you can get no instruction. It is purely based on your understanding of what God is calling you to do. And so as we think about ethics, and we think about coming of age, and we're thinking about where do I get my core values, and what happens when they get challenged, Kierkegaard, I think, helps us as you look through these stories in our readings, that you'll see that there can be a variety of ways in which people are frustrated and are challenged to move up and down on this scale of moral development. So I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed your time with Kierkegaard as I did, and I look forward to reading your responses to these videos and to your readings.